Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Cryptids and Monsters Encounters video. I thought I would mix this one in here while I'm continuing with your aliens and UFO suggestions. This one having to do with yet another scary Skinwalker encounter there from the reddit.com website, there from the subreddit called Skinwalkers. I like to mix these one in every now and then. That way it just still showcases some good views, some good comments, so there is still some interest associated with these encounters. This one has to do with one from a user called Vague Vamp, and they mentioned about something that they basically ran up against there in Lake Lure, North Carolina. Interesting stuff. It's because it's a long story, very detailed in other words, and it's interesting to see that North Carolina apparently also has them too. Anyone that's local around that area, especially for Lake Lure, let me know. Let me know if you have any other type of experiences that mimic what I'm about to talk about here. But they titled theirs as Possible Encounter in Lake Lure, North Carolina, summer of 2015. I'm a skeptic and still unsure of what this could have been, but most people I tell this story to believe it had to be a Skinwalker encounter. Long one, right, when it comes to this title. So let's go ahead and let's share this information here, and then I'll give again my own thoughts and opinions on it afterward. So here's what they state. Sorry, this is going to be a long story because the story spans across a few days. The summer before my 9th grade year, my parents and I went to Lake Lure, North Carolina for a 10-day vacation. The day we got there, we went to a grocery store that was kind of in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by mountains. While my mom was buying groceries, my dad and I found a hiking trail on the other side of the parking lot and went on it. About a mile in, he got a call from my mom saying she needed help putting the food in the car, so we started heading back. I ran a little ways ahead over a hill and out of sight from my dad, coming across a tiny creek down off the side of the path. I went down to stick my hands in and watch the minnows while waiting for my dad to catch up, but soon I realized that something was off. Everything was dead silent. The birds stopped chirping, the leaves in the trees stopped rustling, the creek wasn't babbling even though I could see the water splashing over the stones with my own eyes. I couldn't hear my own breathing, and so I picked my head up, scanned the area, and then saw something only about 15 feet away from me. I say something because I thought it was a cream-colored husky, but realized it was much bigger than any wolf-like dog I had ever seen. At the time, we had a German Shepherd, and whatever this was would have dwarfed her significantly. It was just standing there, looking directly at me, not moving or making any noise. I had not seen it when I went down to the creek, and it's as though it had appeared out of nowhere. I don't know how long we stared at each other, but for whatever reason, to this day, I can't remember what its eyes looked like, and I was looking directly into them the entire time. An interminable amount of time passed, and then finally I heard something. My dad, still on the other side of the hill, calling out to make sure I was there. The thing's ears twitched in his direction, and then it just kind of huffed, turned away, and took off, disappearing behind the ridge in 3 leaps. I was stunned. My dad approached me asking what I was doing, and I told him, I think someone's dog is loose out here. He said there was no one else out here, so it may have been a stray. And what did it look like, he asked. I described its appearance as best as I could. Cream-colored, pointy ears, dense coat, fluffy tail, much bigger than our dog Maggie. The eyes, of course, I could not recall. He said it sounded like it resembled a husky, but was closer in size to a wolf. The only problem was wolves are rarely solitary, and it was pretty sure there weren't any in our current location. Perplexed, we went on to help my mom with the groceries and continue to drive to the little log cabin Airbnb we were staying in, having to chalk up the encounter as just weird. A few days later, my parents were going out to dinner, and I, being 14, stayed behind at the cabin to watch anime and get away from them. It was a shotgun-style cabin, meaning you could come in through the front door, take 10 strides forward, and exit through the back door. Upon entering, you were in a combined living room and kitchenette, with the bedroom I was sleeping in to the left of the front door, and the master bedroom and bathroom to the right. It was a raised cabin with stairs on the side by my bedroom leading up to the front porch that spanned the entire front of the house, ending on the right side with a railing. It also happened to be literally on the side of a mountain. The driveway was at an incline where you always had to put the emergency brake on wherever you parked. As they were heading out, I was sitting on the couch that was against the front wall of the house, the front door to my right, and then a giant long window behind me that looked out onto the porch. The back door was ahead of me, slightly to the right, just outside of the kitchenette area. As if it hadn't been in my line of sight, I wouldn't have realized it was left unlocked. And I noticed that while they were backing down the driveway, so of course being a paranoid 14-year-old really into creepy pastas and top 5 ghost videos to make yourself scared, I immediately got up and then locked it. I then double-checked the other door and all the windows, closing all the curtains over every window in the process as well. A few hours passed with not much happening, which was relieving me since at this time I didn't have a phone, laptop, or tablet, nothing to communicate with people except for the landline in the cabin, and nothing but the knives in the kitchenette to defend myself, but it was short-lived. That relief was soon replaced by unimaginable fear as I heard rapid footsteps directly behind me outside on the porch. They raced past me and then stopped right at the front door. Whatever or whoever it was sounded as if they were on all fours. It was quiet for a few seconds, and then the scratching began. It sounded exactly like when my dog Maggie wanted to be let back inside after we let her out to do her business. I found myself wanting to turn around and peek out the front window or even go to the front door, thinking maybe it was a neighbor's dog or a cute little raccoon, but for some reason, I simply could not move. And that was possibly the best decision my body made for me as I looked to my right and saw the handle of the front door slowly moving up and down as if someone was testing it to see if it was unlocked. When it didn't budge, the handle started moving faster, more aggressive, as if whatever it was trying to rip it from the door. Then it stopped, and the four-legged footsteps scuttled to the far end of the porch and quieted again. I sat there with the TV paused, not breathing, just listening, when maybe a minute passed and 10 strides ahead of me on the back door, more scratches. Scratch, scratch, scratch. I couldn't look away, only thinking, thank blank, I closed the curtains on the back door's tiny little window because the scratching continued, then stopped, but that handle slowly turned down, then turned up, and then down again. It started furiously jiggling it up and down, shaking the door within its threshold. I started panicking, wanting to call my parents or the police, and remembered I had access to a landline that was mounted on the wall right next to that back door. And so I stayed where I was, and eventually the shaking stopped. I sat there waiting, listening, anticipating a third and possibly successful attempt at a break-in, but it never came. I went back to watching sword art online, trying to rationalize it just being a really smart dog that lives on the side of the mountain and enjoys breaking into homes, or a dastardly band of raccoons. That makes sense. By the time my parents got home, I had just about convinced myself that I was crazy and making the whole thing up when my dad pointed out scuffs marked low on the outer side of the front door. Not deep claw marks scratched into the wood, just the kind of scuffs that dogs make with black nails whenever they do it on white painted surfaces. Again, exactly like my German Shepherd at the time and the way they would leave it on our back door. I told them about the scratching on both doors and the doorknobs turning, kind of downplaying it for egotistical reasons at the time. My dad, of course, shrugged, saying it was probably a stray dog, maybe a coyote. My mom did not let me stay or go anywhere by myself after that. When I told my parents this story, they looked up that area we stayed in and found out that area lies on the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains, which is a province of the much larger Appalachian Mountains. That was already creepy to me since Appalachia is one of the oldest mountain ranges on the planet and is known for having weird, unexplained events happen all the time. It only gets worse when I told my coworker this story. She thinks I'm lucky to be alive since my experience sounds like what she had to deal with living outside a native reservation in New Mexico when she was a kid. According to her, skinwalkers were a common occurrence in her small town, especially in the graveyard behind her house. She apparently would experience the footsteps, the scratching, and then the door handle shaking when she was home alone. We looked it up, and apparently North Carolina has the largest indigenous population east of the Mississippi River, so it may be possible. My coworker thinks it was a skinwalker and that if I hadn't locked the back door, my parents would have come back to find me dismembered in the living room or would not have found me at all. My partner thinks the wolf or wolf-like creature I saw was some sort of spirit trying to warn me about what would happen, maybe imbue me with common sense and influence me to lock the door. I personally think there are some really sick people in the world eager to do bad things to others. A TLDR version, I saw what I'm pretty sure was a wolf on a hike in North Carolina, and then a few days later, someone or something tried to break into the cabin while I was alone, but all the doors and windows were locked. My coworker from New Mexico, who has had multiple encounters with what she calls skinwalkers, thinks it was that. My partner thinks it was a good spirit warning me about the intruder, and I think the scariest thing on earth is man. And then that's it. That's everything that this user mentioned in their long story, the user called Vague Vamp. Let's go ahead and let's talk about that here. So how about that? It looks like North Carolina, according to the user, has one of the largest regions of Native Americans. Like when it comes to the indigenous population. Somebody back me up on that. Let me know if that's still apparently the case, at least east of the Mississippi River. And then it looks like, yeah, Blue Ridge Mountains, which they were nearby the Appalachian Mountains, is apparently very haunted too, like when it comes to these skinwalkers. When I was first reading that information, it reminded me of that very, very good show that was called Cole. Don't know if you've seen that. It was on like Spike TV a couple of years back, but it was there in that Appalachian Mountain area where they were finding all that coal. And it is pretty much out there in the middle of nowhere. I remember those episodes showcasing just deep darkness, especially those that worked obviously overnight. And you could just imagine like it would be haunting to hear something out there that's unexplainable. Can't really see it, but you get the sense that they see you. And now reading this information makes me wonder if they had any type of encounters there. But how about that when it comes to the two encounters that this user had? One over there by that foresty area, apparently something watching him, and the way it looked like a standard skinwalker in human form, if you will, but the eyes just were never really recognized. And then the second encounter being whatever occurred there at that Airbnb, whatever happened with this thing that was unseen, thankfully, at least for the user, but something that was on all fours and then was apparently scratching the window area too. Makes me wonder also with that last set of paragraphs, the idea that one of them, the spouse, if I'm not mistaken, was mentioning that the first one was a good spirit. Like it was out there, it caught that person's attention, caught the user's attention, and then it made them realize, hey, I better be careful, let me lock up everything. And if they hadn't had done that, then potentially being out there in the middle of nowhere, it would have been a habit to just leave things unlocked. Who knows if that second encounter, whatever that was, if it was a different skinwalker or something else, if that would have been something that just easily got into that Airbnb, and then there could have been something so bad happen afterward to the user. Interesting angle. I never would have thought that until that other person mentioned it, that spouse, in other words, as a different version of what could have been, because my initial impression was that it was the same skinwalker, like the one that they saw in the area out there in the forest was the same one that they encountered over by that Airbnb. But I'm starting to side more with this other angle. But let me know what you guys think. Post those comments below. Scary encounter, no, when it comes to this two of them, being out there in the middle of nowhere in North Carolina and then having this kind of stuff occur. Again, any locals, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are too. All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.